Might seem crazy what I'm about to say. Sunshine, she's here, you can take a break.
Welcome to the Somerville Line. I'm your host, Alvin Benjamin Carter III, and our other host, Maribeth Swan.
Hi, everybody.
Tonight, Maribeth's going to kick everything off. She's going to talk to astrologer Joyce Levin. Then I'll be talking to Melanie Morris from Bay State Biking News, which is on Wednesdays here on SCATV. And then we're going to finish up the show with Brandon Wilson and Barbara Mangum. Brandon Wilson is from the City of Somerville Historical Preservation, and Barbara Mangum is president of the Board of Directors of Historic Somerville and also at the Somerville Museum.
Exciting show we got lined up.
Yeah, it should be pretty good. So.
Remember
No,
back
I
then?
can remember.
Okay.
I was sort of between college and graduate school, and what am I going to do with my life? And it's sort of a long story, but I've been working full-time and going to school full-time, and I was going to take some time off in between. And in the interim, a friend of mine had gotten into astrology, and she did my chart.
Okay, some people might not completely understand what that means.
Okay, well, your chart is actually based on your date, your time, and your place of birth, and what it represents is like a picture of your life potential, so that life isn't an accident. So I'd been studying psychology. This friend of mine does my astrology chart, and it is a more complete view of human nature than anything I'd ever seen. And so it turned out she and I moved to Boston at the same time, and I took a class one night, and I said, okay, this is what I'm going to do when I grow up, and that was it.
And you knew immediately.
I knew immediately. It's easy to be irrational when you're young.
Or inspired.
Yeah, but no, it was, I've just done it ever since, and I've never been bored.
Okay. So for some people, we said the chart is the time and place of birth and where you are at that time. And so if someone comes to you and wants some
Guidance.
intuition and guidance into what's going on with their world, how would you?
Well, the first thing, astrology is somewhere between sort of an art and a science. So the science is where the planets are.
Right.
But we're not astronomers, we're astrologers. So the idea is the position of the planets at the moment of your birth have a specific meaning.
And most people are going by, if you read your astrology report in the newspaper, you're looking at where your sun.
Yeah, and it's not, your sun sign is, it's your basic nature, but it would sort of be like taking a side view of your face and saying that's the sum total of your being. It's not untrue, it's just limited.
Right.
And so it's based on the position of where all the planets are at your exact moment of birth. And so if you were born in Boston or you were born in New York, your chart would be different even though you're in the same time zone because the location is different. And so even twins are not born at the same moment.
Wow. C-sections? How do you get? No, I'm just kidding.
Well, it's my belief that the baby comes out at whenever they're due, regardless of what manipulation gets in the way.
Okay.
So that it's like your chart is like your fate. But you can look at it like your genetic makeup. Like you can't change the genes, but you can change. You can change how you handle things. But we're born with a certain set of talents and abilities, and from my standpoint, sort of a certain set of hang-ups or challenges.
Okay.
And it's how you maneuver through those things. But the more you understand them, the easier it is to do that.
So when someone comes to you and they're looking for some guidance and some intuition, you look at their chart and then you help them how?
Well, it's sort of, I think, in a sense, I feel like I give people permission to be themselves. So it's not an accident that you have certain talents or that you're not good in something else. And if you're in tune with yourself, you really want to go with what your natural talents are. And sometimes people are afraid that maybe they're really not as strong as they'd like them to be, or the family wants them to do something else. But it's not inherent in the person's nature. I actually do a reasonable amount of work with families of just like a mother might call me, I just got out of the hospital, here's the baby's birth time.
Oh wow, immediately.
Immediately, and what it helps the parents do is to sort of understand the children as being separate from them. Because people come into the world, even babies come into the world their own way. It's like if you have children, you sort of know that it's a two-way street. like the child gives you cues, not just you're giving the child cues.
So it's a lot of education.
And so it's, you know, so with people, I help them sort of understand why they are the way they are, what they can do with it, and then the second part is when. So the idea is that life is cycles, and that cycles are predictable. And so this could be the greatest time in the world for you, or maybe a time that you're so depressed you don't want to get out of bed. And where astrology really differs from psychology is in psychology there's a norm. In astrology, what's normal for me is not normal for you. And so that, you know, there are variations depending on what we're like to begin with.
Okay. And so when you came to Boston and you went to a class and you decided that you were going to become an astrologer.
That was it, yeah.
And then what was the...
Well, now, at the time, this was a long time ago.
That's
you know, there were astrology classes. I mean, this was in the 70s.
Okay.
So there were astrology classes like every night because then astrology, psychology were the things to do, whereas today you should get an MBA. do you know what I mean? So trends change.
Right.
But at the time, so there were lots of people to study with, and you know, I was in classes like every night and bothering everybody I knew to practice, because it's one thing to read something in a book and it's or to have somebody tell you something, and it's something else to see whether or not it really works.
Well, so you said in the beginning, astrology is both an art and a science.
Right.
So you explained how what the science of astrology is, and
art is how you put the information together.
Okay.
It's sort of, in some ways, astrology is like economics. And
Oh my!
I know. I mean, actually, we can predict economic cycles, but that's actually not what I meant. It's like there's a certain body of knowledge. So, for instance, the outer planets are in signs for like long periods of time. So right now, Pluto, which is the planet that sort of brings out the dark side of the sign, is in Capricorn. The last time Pluto was in Capricorn was the American Revolution. So we kind of look back to say, okay, what happened then in terms of world cycles? And so given that, what's likely to happen the next time? But the circumstances of what's going on aren't the same. But you then apply it to what's going on now. In the same way, there's certain cycles that have specific kinds of meanings. So if you're Saturn is the planet that has discipline, duty, all the shoulds.
It's a big planet.
The discipline, duty, responsibility, all the stuff you're supposed to do. Saturn has like a 29-year cycle. So astrologically, we look at 29-ish is the time frame of like growing up, not 22 when you get out of college. So for all the young listeners, they've got a little break here.
And that's called your Saturn return?
Exactly. And so there's certain planetary cycles that correlate with certain kinds of things that are likely to happen in someone's life. And so, again, this could be the time. I mean, I had my biggest, I don't know, you could, depending on how you look at it, I had one client that hit the jackpot at Atlantic City, and her husband won $200,000 at a slot machine at a time that I told them it was a good time to gamble. However, I can't guarantee those results because, one, it wasn't something that was going to happen all of the time.
Right.
And two, you have to be lucky to begin with, because if you don't have a lucky chart, it doesn't matter what's going on. You're not going to be that lucky. And some people are luckier than others. You know, but that doesn't mean other people can't be successful. So the chart is going to show natural tendencies, talents, and it's not an accident that you pick certain kinds of people in relationships, for better or worse. So it's like you can't blame the ex-spouse. It's in your chart or it wouldn't be there. Or that if you're having, some people have trouble with their bosses no matter where they go. That's in their chart. Now, it doesn't mean that it's not happening in the environment, but it's sort of when you understand what it is in you that's helping to create that situation, then you can do something about it.
Interesting. And so as you become stronger and as an artistic interpreter, you feel closer to the people who come to see you? Do people come to see you again and again, or is it more of a one-time?
Some people come once and never come back, and I have other clients I've had for longer than I've had a computer, which is I mean, I have some clients I've had for more than 30 years. And other people come once and I don't see them again. Some people come regularly. Some people will show up when they have a crisis. And so it really varies. I mean, I recommend that people come in more regularly. Like I had one woman come in not that long ago, and she said, "Oh, you gave me good news." I don't get good news. I go, "You don't usually come. You usually come in when you're in a crisis. What do you expect?" You know, I tell people, I don't make it up. I only report it. Do you know what I mean? I can't change the cycle. But you know, on the other hand, sometimes people are in a difficult cycle, and it's about to turn, and they're about to give up, but things are about to shift.
And they come to you looking for vision and encouragement.
And sometimes they're in a good, you know, things have been going well and they're about to lose their job. It's not so easy, but.
Wow. And what kind of professional development have you done over the years? I know we talked about one organization that you belong to.
Yeah, well, I'm the president of the Boston chapter of the National Council for Geocosmic Research, which was a fancy way of the founders disguising the word astrology. And I'm also the clerk on the national board. And so we are actually, for anybody who's interested, we actually have meetings not quite once a month in the Boston area. And so for anybody who's interested in finding out more, like learning more astrology, that would be a good way to go.
Even if you were a layperson?
That you'd actually, meetings, you don't have to be a professional by any means, but you need a little bit of knowledge or you kind of be lost.
And you teach some classes
yourself?
yourself?
I do teach classes,
as
yes.
well.
Yeah.
You want to tell us a little bit about those?
Yeah, I've got an interpretation class starting actually Tuesday, May 5th. And I'm going to be doing a beginning workshop for people who don't know, who just want to get started and haven't done anything yet. In June. I'm not exactly certain of the date yet, but it'll be at the Theosophical Society in Arlington. And it'll be on a Sunday.
Okay.
So it's a good way for people to get started if they're interested.
So one is a beginner astrology?
Yeah, the other one is more for people that have already been studying and you want to, like it's one thing to know the pieces and it's something else to know how to put them together. That's where the art comes in. And to learn how to weigh and balance. Because we all have things that don't fit together neatly about ourselves. And so how do you put those things together? So you could be optimistic in one area of your life and you can be fearful in another, and those things don't neutralize each other. You know, everything kind of operates simultaneously.
And astrology really can help build your awareness of yourself.
Exactly.
And how you're interacting with your surroundings. And
how you see yourself too.
You have a couple of books
I
here
do.
on the table.
Yeah, this book I actually wrote in the 90s. And actually just in...
Can we maybe hold it up to the camera so we can see what that it's called?
This is a beginner's guide to astrological interpretation. And this is more like this book people could actually use to, if they know where their planets are, they can look up stuff about themselves.
Okay.
And it's sort of written as like a self-help guide.
Excellent. For people who wanted more general knowledge, maybe this is something a little cheater to say, but there's an astrology site called astro.com, ASTRO.com, and you can enter in your time and place of birth, and it can tell you where your planets are.
Actually, you can do that on my website also.
Oh, wow.
Yeah,
okay, and your website is?
JoyceLevine.com.
JoyceLevine.com.
Yeah, there's a section that says calculate your chart free, and I won't know you're there. You can go in there and get the position of all the planets, and then there's like a one-line interpretation of each planet.
Of each planet. That's a really great way to go if you're not really familiar with astrology, and it's something that you can only learn from.
Well, you know, it's funny. I met somebody at a networking event who was kind of skeptical. And so she went to my website, and I didn't know her at all, really, except for meeting her at this networking event. And she went to my website, and she put in herself, her husband, and her 2 children's birth information. And she went, oh, my God. She was, like, shocked because even in that, like, one line for each thing, it couldn't have been everyone fit the person and wouldn't have fit anybody else.
It can surprise you.
Yeah.
And anything else that you want to talk about that we haven't covered here today?
Well, I think that a lot of times people don't really understand what astrology is. and that what astrology really helps people do is in a sense live more effectively. I know that sounds kind of trite or cliche, but it really helps people to get a better understanding of themselves, why they are the way they are, and what they can do with it. And again, the sun, most people know their sun sign, but the moon has to do with your emotions.
And your mother, yes?
A lot of astrologers use the moon as the mother. I actually don't.
Okay.
I use the moon as the emotional message that you took out of your family. And so it's sort of, so for instance, my moon is in Aries. So if I looked at that as the moon being my mother should have been independent and self-sufficient. But we lived in the suburbs, my mother never drove. Do you know what I mean? What I learned from my mother was to be independent. You know, so it could be by example, but it could be, do you know where your moon is by any chance?
I do, it's in Virgo.
Okay, so the emotional message you got probably was to sort of be organized, maybe be perfect, have your life in order kind of thing.
Well, oldest child gets that too, I think, sometimes.
Well, usually the oldest child has a strong Saturn. So I'd have to look at your chart to see that.
Okay.
But generally, and are you familiar with astrology at all? No, you don't have to be. That's all right.
I was born in February.
Yeah,
He's an Aquarian. I know that much.
well, but that's not going to tell us the moon.
Yeah.
No.
But each sign does have certain characteristics. So I guess your bow tie would be Aquarian.
Oh, okay.
Why? How would you relate that
Well,
to
it's sort
Aquarian?
of like it's an unusual look, right?
Yeah. Yeah, that makes sense.
And
And very stylish.
And kind of electric looking.
I like that. Okay. Yeah.
Well,
and so, you know, each planet has a different meaning. Like Venus is found very close to the sun. So Venus is a planet that has to do with love. If Venus is in the same sign as your sun, your tendency is to be very attracted to people who are more like you. If it's not in the same sign as your sun, then there's, you know, it can be, I don't know, it's either the sign before it, the sign after it, or a sign and a half away. And so the closer it is to your sun, in some ways, quote, the sweeter your personality is. But the further away it is, the more likely you are to be attracted to people who are somewhat different than you. But of course, Venus is who you're attracted to. It's not necessarily who you end up with. That depends on other things in the chart.
Well, Joyce, I want to just thank you so much for being with us here today. Everybody, if you're wanting to learn more about Joyce Levine, it's joycelevine.com. And she's available for readings and chart interpretations. And also teaching some classes, which is on her website as well. And we thank you so much for being here.
Great, thank you for having me.
Coming.
Hello folks, this is comedian Jimmy Tingle with some great tips on how to stay healthy and save money at the same time. Are you ready for this? I'm talking about tap water. That's right, ladies and gentlemen, tap water. Who needs to spend hundreds of dollars on bottled water every year when you can get water practically free from your kitchen sink or your neighborhood park? That's right. Let me tell you something, folks. I have been drinking tap water. Look at this. I have been drinking tap water practically my whole life, and I think I look pretty good for 104 years old. And you can save that money that you would spend on bottled water for healthy food, like vegetables and fruits and chickens and meat and poultry and fish and berries and nuts and Quaker oats and oatmeal and bread. Bread. I know, bread's a little fattening, but look at me. If you're going to live to be 104, you're going to need a little fat for the winter. You may ask, how come our water is so pure and clean? I'm going to tell you. Because we get it from the Quabbin Reservoir in western Massachusetts, ladies and gentlemen, and it is chemically tested to get rid of bacteria and germs, and they add fluoride to the water to fight tooth decay. Look at these teeth. Huh? Not bad. 104 years old. Look at these teeth. Ah, tap water, the nectar of the gods. From a secret underground pipe, also known as the Department of Public Works. It is the smarter and healthier choice. Tap water. Trust me, I've been around a while.
By the way,
with Melanie Morris, and you're the host of Bay State Biking News right here on SCATV.
I am. It airs on Wednesday nights at 9 o'clock, so please watch.
Okay, so tell us more about your show and how long it's been running, and you know who you've had on the show.
All right, so Bay State Biking News has been running for about 5 years now, and I just became the host in January, which is something that I love to do. I'm a long-distance bicyclist, so I love riding. I love riding and raising money for charities, and we can talk more about that later. And so I've had David Watson, Richard Fries, which is the former and current executive of Mass Bike.
Okay.
I've had, and they talked about all things cycling, how to be safer, and it's very important with cycling because obviously Boston's a cycling city.
Yes.
And there are a lot of people that want to cycle and they want to be green, they don't want that carbon emission. And they want to get places cheaply, they want to exercise, and they want to be safe too. As you know, within Boston, there's been a lot of cycling accidents.
Yes.
Unfortunately, people are killed, the dump trucks, and just accidents, and we don't want that. So I try to bring people on who can talk anything about cycling. So both Richard and David talked about what Boston's doing to make cycling safe. They gave us updates relative to Mass Bike. And then there was Larry Finnison, who's the author of The Cycling Craze, Boston Cycling Craze. Boston was a big cycling town in the late 1800s, 1880 to 1900. It was a huge cycling town.
Wow.
And he's written a book on this. And so he talked about his book. Let's see, there's been Wednesday Jane, who is the CEO of Metro Pedal Power. And Metro Pedal Power is a transport company via bike. And they actually have the contract for the city of Cambridge for their recyclables. So she picks up all the recyclables, I think it's like 3 days a week, and then takes them to the recycling yard. Wow. So I thought that was really,
that is really cool.
I thought that was really cool.
On her bike.
On her bike. She can deliver packages, or she can pick up recyclables, she can do the compost. And also, if you need to move and you don't have enough stuff for a very large truck, you call Wednesday Jane. And
then Wednesday Jane comes through with the bike, takes care of it all?
Exactly. She'll come through with the bike and take care of it all.
That's good.
Let's see. Last week was Susan McLucas. She's the CEO of the Bicycling Riding School. She's taught over 3,000 people how to ride bikes from all over the world. If you go to her website, and read the testimonials. There are people from all over the world, all ages, mostly adults though. Adults who just didn't learn how to ride a bike as a child, or adults that had a bad accident or fell or something.
Well, the city's different than riding your bike in some rural area too.
Exactly, it is, and that also. And speaking of that, so Susan McLucas teaches people how to ride their bike, and then I had Eli Damon on via Skype. He actually teaches you how to ride in the city and be safe, and he actually calls it driving your bike. He wants to kind of like empower people. It's just not riding a bicycle like you're driving a car, you're riding your bike. So he runs a class that teaches people how to ride safely within the city and how to drive their bikes safely.
No, that's great, because just the other day I saw what almost could have been a bad accident. Someone got doored, but they were going slow enough that they were okay.
Sure.
And the thing you wonder is, we also feel like some drivers should be learning what's going on.
And a lot of guests talk about that. Both Eli, Susan McLucas, David Watson, Richard Fries, they talked about that, educating drivers. So it's not only the cyclist. Most cyclists are good cyclists. Obviously, there's going to be some that don't follow the rules, but then there are drivers who are out there texting that don't follow the rules either.
Yes.
So a lot of it is, or some of it is also educating drivers. Looking for cyclists and. Me, I'm a cyclist, I ride 1,500 to 2,000 miles a year. Wow. And when I see something wrong or I feel like I've been wrong, I will, go follow that card. Like I saw this woman, I was going straight down and she was coming to an intersection and she was going to turn right. And I said, and I was coming down a hill, so I was going pretty fast. I said, I don't think this woman has seen me in this yellow jersey going, I don't know, 25 miles an hour down this hill. Let me slow down. And I slowed down, and thank God, because when she came down the hill, she took a right. So we both ended up at a red light together. So I was like, excuse me, did you see me coming down that hill there? She said, no. She said, I didn't see you. And I said, well, you know what? You need to look out for cyclists.
Yeah, if you live in Boston, Cambridge, Somerville, you have to.
You have to. And actually, there was a woman who pretty much almost doored me as well. She was going into Starbucks. And I just followed her right in the Starbucks on my bike, and I said, "Excuse me, ma'am, you know, did you realize you almost doored me back there?" She's like, "No, I didn't see you." I said, "You know what? You really need to pay attention." And she apologized. She apologized. She said, "You know, I don't look for cyclists, and there are a lot of drivers out there that don't look for cyclists. You know, they're always looking for something large. You know, they're not looking for bicyclists or motorcyclists."
Yeah.
And
and it's funny, you'd think, because there's a big culture here. Also, the big culture I've noticed, there's a lot of bike messengers, and that's a thing around here. And that's its own, I'd call it the subculture at this point. And I'm wondering, do you know anyone in that world? Or because I see them, they pull some tricks, and I feel like they're safer than some of the professors I see riding up to Harvard on their bike.
And it's funny you mentioned, I had a bike messenger on the show.
Oh.
I'll just name him, I'll just call him by his nickname, Boston's Deadliest Messenger.
Wow.
So I don't know if I should use his name with that, but we'll just say, if you Google Boston's Deadliest Messengers, exactly.
Okay.
His first name is Kevin.
Got it.
It'll be our little secret.
Just something on the low.
Exactly,
Okay.
exactly. His first name is Kevin. Yes, Kevin, you know, he really is. You look at some of his videos, he's been on Chronicle, and there's a great YouTube feature of him for about, I don't know, 3 or 4 minutes. And he does some crazy stuff, and he just says, you know, he enjoys it, and it really, you know, it invigorates him, and, you know, he likes that. And he doesn't wear a helmet either. So I did scold him on my show.
Yeah.
Absolutely. All cyclists should wear helmets,
100%.
you know, because, you know, that's what keeps some brain surgeons in business is, you know, when you crash and you hit your head. But he's actually, he's older. He's in his 60s, and, you know, he looks great. He rides into Boston to work as a bike messenger. He probably rides about 20 miles into work and then 20 miles home at night.
Wow.
And so, yeah, messengers are out there. And then not everyone is riding crazy. You know,
Yes.
you're always going to have, no matter what industry you're in, you're always going to have one rogue person.
Yes.
Unfortunately.
It's true.
But I work in Harvard Square, and there, you know, people can come up and rent a bike. So then
Right.
you've got tourists here
Right.
who are biking.
Right. And that's so funny you mentioned the rent a bike because Hubway, Benji Cantor was also on my show.
Oh, wow.
He's the marketing director for Hubway, Motivate, which is a company that runs Hubway. And you are right, you get tourists in the city, and then with Hubway, you know, they haven't quite figured out the whole helmet thing.
That was my question.
Right.
Yes.
So there's no, you know, you can rent the bike, but you can't rent a helmet. You got to bring your own helmet. And most people, you know, when they want the bike, you know, they're not just bringing their helmet with them.
Exactly. And a lot of employers, you know, they'll give some kind of benefit for riding green, but it would be great to give them a discount on a safe bike, safe helmet. That's another thing that you don't see as much.
Absolutely, absolutely.
Interesting. Do you ever cover nutrition? Because riding a bike is hard work. I have a good friend. He's a cyclist as well.
It is hard work.
And he's changed. He had a very strict diet, and he changed it. He was actually he was vegan, and then he was willing to change it for bike races. He was doing those like 100-mile bike races.
Century rides.
Yeah, century rides. Or he'll
Okay.
ride from Providence to have lunch with us and then ride home. So I was like, I was like, wow, I would have gotten on the train and came to you. It's fine. But, so
you know, I have not had anyone on yet for nutrition, but you know, I'm. If anybody's out there, if you're a nutritionist and you want to be on my Wednesday show, by all means, please, you know, you can tweet me at Melanie Morris TV. And please, I would love to have you on. So I haven't done nutrition yet, but that's very, very important. Obviously, nutrition is important
for
period,
life.
you know, for life period, but especially when you're cycling and you're riding those 100-mile rides. And for example, Big Sister on one of my charity rides.
Tell us about that, because we're actually going to be running out of time, but can you give us the quick version?
I sure can give you a quick version. I raise money for charities. Usually it's MS, diabetes, Big Sister. Last 2 years for Big Sister, my team's raised about $20,000. We do 100-mile rides. Cancer is usually 72 miles, and MS is from here to P-Town, which is 150 miles in 2 days.
Wow, that's amazing. Well, thank you so much for coming on the show.
You're welcome. It was my
wonderful.
pleasure.
Great to meet you.
My pleasure.
Make sure to check out her show on Wednesdays.
Absolutely.
Definitely. That's great. So, wow, all right, and I want to know more about the diabetes ride.
Yes.
So
That's
inspiring.
June.
June? Okay.
A
Olá, eu sou o Paulo Pinto, diretor executivo da MAPS, da Massachusetts Alliance of Portuguese Speakers. Quando vejo pessoas a comprar água engarrafado, fico espantado. Por que gastar dinheiro em garrafas de água quando a que sai da torneira é igualmente boa e praticamente grátis? A água de Somerville vem do Coben Reservoir, um lago limpo a cerca de 65 milhas a oeste de Boston. A água é tratada para matar os micróbios, flúor é adicionado para reduzir as cáries dentárias e a sua qualidade é testada. Este processo garante que a água da nossa cidade é, na verdade, mais segura e saudável que a água engarrafada que você compra nos supermercados. Eu bebo, a minha família bebe e os funcionários aqui na MAPS também bebem. A água é a melhor bebida para matar a sede. Não tem calorias ou aditivos químicos que dão sabor e é praticamente grátis. Por isso, use o seu dinheiro para comprar comida fresca e saudável para a sua família e não em água. Não ligue aos anúncios que dizem que a água engarrafada é mais segura. Isso não é verdade. Se quiser, pode comprar um filtro para as suas torneiras sem gastar dinheiro sempre que quiser beber. Delicioso. A água da torneira é a escolha inteligente e saudável.
All right, we are back with Barbara Mangum, President of the Board of Directors for Historic Somerville, and Brandon Wilson from City of Somerville Historical Preservation. Thank you for coming on.
Sure. Very nice to be here.
So could you tell us each about your various roles? One of you has a couple of roles in
yes,
town. That's
well, I think we all have lots of roles, but in this case, I'm president of Historic Somerville, which I founded in 2004, not knowing that the city of Somerville had a Somerville Historical Society. And that one was formed in 1897 and then changed its name in the 1980s to the Somerville Museum. So they're two totally separate organizations, which is very confusing for people, but we really do different things. And so I'm also president of the Board of Trustees of the Somerville Museum. So I'm involved with both organizations.
That's great.
Yep.
You?
I work for the City of Somerville. I'm a city planner, and currently I'm heading up as executive director of the Historic Preservation Commission, which is a volunteer board that's part of the city. It's appointed by the mayor, 14 members, and so I've been staff to them for a number of years.
That's wonderful. So today we want to talk about, you have a couple of events coming up. One is Jane's Walk, and that's pretty soon, correct?
Yes.
Yeah, she could tell you about that.
Yes, that is actually this weekend. We have two events coming this weekend, and this is the kickoff to Preservation Month in Somerville, which we've been doing every year now for, well, since I've been director, I guess, over 10 years. And Jane's Walk is actually an event that happens not only in Somerville and throughout the United States, but throughout the world. And it's a testament to Jane Jacobs, who was an urban activist, who is probably best known for her work in New York City. She was partially responsible, some will say wholly responsible, for saving Greenwich Village.
Oh, wow.
Many years ago. And so she got involved in some other areas of the country. She also was in Canada and did a lot to help neighborhoods sort of preserve themselves when sometimes they were close to demolition because city planners thought that that was the improvements that needed to be made. And so she has quite a legacy. And so this is a celebration of her history. And basically it's an opportunity for residents of particular neighborhoods to get to know a little bit more about their community. So it's led by the residents themselves, businesses as well, if they want to be part of it. And ours this year will be in Union Square. Each year we do it someplace else. Sometimes we coordinate with the City of Cambridge, and sometimes we do it on our own. This year it's with the Union Square Main Street program. And we chose Union Square because there's so much happening there, and there's so much interest, and so many people that have moved there in the recent past and don't know much about it. And so we're going to take them on a walk that, you know, hopefully they'll learn a lot more.
That's wonderful. And then there's another event following the day after?
Right. I didn't know what to do with my weekend.
So you're busy, yeah, I was going to say.
Yeah, it's not exactly what I call great planning, but I'm hoping the weather will be great all weekend, which it hasn't been for several now, so it's got to get better, right?
Yes.
But the second one will be a walking tour of East Somerville, which is a part of the city that I think a lot of people don't often go to. And it's for people outside the city as well who might want to know about what's happening in Somerville. I think it's gotten in the news quite a bit lately, and for very positive reasons. It has, it's one of the oldest areas of the city, being part of Charlestown originally. And for those that weren't part of Patriots Day, a little over a week ago, when we were part of Charlestown, we were very much part of the Revolution as well, and that's where Paul Revere had his famous ride from the Old North Church, and he came by Broadway and Foss Park in East Somerville, and went on out to Medford and Arlington and such. And so, but anyway, this particular walking tour is going to be actually look more at the architecture of the community. It has some really wonderful older buildings, and a lot of their charm is still left, and some of them are designated historic by the city of Somerville. So we'll be showcasing those, as well as Broadway, which is part of the Main Street program that's been formed there, East Somerville Main Street. And the city, working with them, has actually made a lot of improvements along the Broadway, narrowing a lot of the streets there to make them more pedestrian and bicycle friendly, putting in bicycle lanes to pick up on what they were just saying. Somerville is very proud of the fact that we are trying to create a lot more opportunities and a lot safer opportunities for people to bike. So we will be taking them down Broadway as well, and ending up at a local restaurant, La Brasa, for a reception there, which is one of the storefronts that actually has been totally redone. You wouldn't recognize what it used to look like, and they're getting an award from the Preservation Commission at the end of May for the work that they did there, restoring the facade. And
it's beautiful. We drove by, I'm like, whoa,
yes.
this is wonderful, yeah.
Yeah, it was a totally nondescript, frankly, we could say ugly building before, and the owners have done a fabulous job working with the city through the Storefront Improvement Program as well, and to bring it back to more of what it would have liked it in the olden days, as they say.
So where, how can people participate, or do they have to register, or can they meet up and start walking?
No, and in most cases the things that we do are free. I don't require people to sign up for the most part, but it's always good to know that people are coming. We do have a calendar, which I did bring tonight, that will be on our website as well as lots of other places. For the Jane's Walk, you just have to meet at Union Square Plaza, which is in front of the police station, the first police station, or second I should say, which has been converted to a commercial office building. And that starts at 10 o'clock on Saturday. And the East Somerville Walking Tour will start at Mount Vernon Restaurant, which is right on the border between Charlestown and Somerville.
Wonderful.
And that one starts at 2 o'clock.
Wonderful.
And that'll end around 4:30.
So you might see me there. That sounds great.
Great. I
That'd
love
be
it.
good.
Everybody's invited.
Ed Gordon is the leader of the tour, and he's past president, maybe currently as well, of the Victorian Society. He's a wealth of knowledge, and he's really delightful to just hear. Lots of people are just his fans and come just to hear him.
That's wonderful.
So
yeah,
it's very worthwhile.
Right. The city's hired him for a number of years because he is so entertaining, and he does walking tours all over the Boston metropolitan area and brings that into his talks, weaves it in lots of actually contrasting facts and figures, and Barbara's absolutely right. People come just because of him.
Somerville.
And he's gotten to know Somerville very well because he's done a lot of surveying for us.
And what has your work been like here?
Well, I brought a picture actually of Patriots Day, and this is the local history club. I don't know if you can zoom in on this or not, but these are one of the favorite parts I have as Historic Somerville is working with the local history club, which is at the Somerville High School. So these are teenagers, and they come from all over the world, as you can see. And I just think it's very fun for them to participate as a colonial. And for some of them, you know, it's really their first opportunity to really, you know, participate in this way. And it really brings to the fore also cultural differences. For instance, a lot of these kids also participate in Ghosts of Somerville, which we do at Milk Grove Cemetery in October. And at that time, we have each of the kids assigned a different role, and they're assigned a role based on who's buried in the cemetery or who has an association with it. And some of these children come from countries where they don't bury their dead. You know, they are incinerated or, you know, something else. But they found that very weird.
There's a whole plot
really
of land of people there.
Yeah, you know, there were like bones. There are bones here. Anyway, I love dealing with these children. They're teenagers. I'm sure they hate being called children, but they're really, really fun. And we work with Ada Santos and Alicia Kirsten over at the high school to do that. So that's Historic Somerville. We do a lot of reenactments. We do a local history lecture series that I think you've got the postcard for. We've got an upcoming lecture May 17th. Yep. I don't know if you want to try to focus on that or not. Good luck. But so that's, we have Vilma Sullivan and Diane Blewett. They're both master gardeners. And they're going to be coming to the Somerville Museum and doing a talk on the a brief agrarian history of Somerville. And this is really fun. They've gone around, Diane, I think with her husband, and have taken pictures of all the old barns in Somerville.
Oh.
So if you did not realize that there were old barns.
I didn't know there was a barn in Somerville.
Yes, there are.
Wow.
And there's even old farmhouses that you just don't realize that's what they are.
That's really interesting.
But no, there's a lot of old buildings in Somerville, and it's fun to see how they've changed over time.
Made me think about, I did a master's in museum studies at Harvard Extension School. Thanks, yeah. And
you should come volunteer.
Oh, so I was like, yeah, I should check it out. And it was surprising how people didn't realize historic sites are museums.
Yes.
And I was wondering, do you ever find that it's also hard to find people to work at an historic site because you only need 1-2 people. You may or may not even need a computer to do it.
Yeah.
Do you find it hard to staff historic places or set up situations where a place is historic but it's never open because no one knows that they can work there? Or
well, definitely
volunteer?
This is a call for all people who are interested in volunteering to get a hold of us. Brandon in particular has been really instrumental in getting docents for Milk Row Cemetery because that's an 1804 cemetery, and when I came and started really looking into this around the year 2000 or so. The cemetery was in pretty poor condition at that time, and a lot of people, it's right by Market Basket on Somerville Ave, and many people did not know it was even there.
You
so
could
you would
blink
talk
and you
to
would
people.
you would miss it.
Yeah, exactly. You would talk to people and they'd be like, what? And anyway, so over that time period, really, I have to give a huge amount of credit to Brandon because, you know, she's done all kinds of planning and grant writing, and then, you know, finally we've gotten to the place where it's really a delightful little garden in the city. It's still a cemetery, so it's a rather calm garden. And you do have to, we can't really just let it be open to the public because everything is so fragile. So that's why we have to open it only certain days when there are docents there who can take people around in small groups and things like that. But it's a wonderful site, you know, in Somerville. And it has an 1863 monument there to the Civil War that is possibly the oldest in the country.
wow.
It's a very, very moving monument because they ran out of room when they were carving it because it was so early. The war wasn't over. They didn't know how many people were going to die.
Oh, wow.
So they went with one assumption, and they wound up having to carve into the obelisk on top because so many people from Somerville gave their life in that war.
Wow.
And it's a good segue to mention as part of Preservation Month, one of the other events, we have 9 events for the month to celebrate all the historic assets of the Somerville. And so one of them will be on May 19th, I think it is. Yes, Tuesday, May 19th, which will be an opening of the cemetery, and lo and behold, Barbara Mangum.
Oh, that's right.
It's neglected to mention this detail, but she will actually be giving a talk
I've just
about
signed up for that.
That's wonderful.
And it'll also be the launching of our docent program for the season, and it is a seasonal program for obvious reasons, and starts in May and it'll go through hopefully until November, assuming that it's not snowing or something. And we try and open it on Sundays, like one Sunday a month, and then also during the week one day to accommodate people's different schedules. And if you're at all interested, we are always looking for additional docents. And if you were to come to this one on the 19th, Barbara will give you some excellent training about what's there and why other people.
Training.
But often the docents actually get dressed up in historical attire, something relevant to that period in the 1800s through the 1900s. And it is really an oasis in the midst of a pretty, busy commercial area of Somerville and Somerville Avenue. But it has benefited from the fact that the city did a lot of work through a state grant on Somerville Avenue several years ago. And so now we have handicapped access into the site, fully into it and within the site. We've got a state grant. We've done a master plan, a preservation master plan there, again with a state grant. And we're still working away at that in terms of executing its recommendations. Yes, there we go. This looks like what it might look like in a couple of months, hopefully. And we just actually applied for and were successful in getting a grant from the city's first round of Community Preservation Act funds. And so that will be a match, we hope, to a state grant that we're applying for in the next couple of weeks to actually do some repair and rehabilitation of the tombs that are there. There's 8 tombs, and we've restored and rehabilitated 2 of them, but we have another 6 to go. And so we did another state grant a couple of years ago, and wasn't able to finish that. So I'm hoping that we can get some additional money to do that in the next 8 months or so.
That is wonderful.
It is. It's really great.
What are some of the other events you have coming up? Because you said there were 9, so let's list them off. Yeah, but
well, we've covered at least 4.
Let the people at home know.
Yes, it's going to be a very busy. It starts in the middle of April for me, and it just keeps on going. It seems like. So, with Barbara's help, I should mention, she's been instrumental in making a lot of these things happen. So, we mentioned this weekend the 2 on Saturday and Sunday, and then. Of course, the talk that Diane and Vilma will be doing on the 17th. The 19th was this Milk Rose Cemetery, and then on the 24th is the Memorial Day Parade, where Barbara and Historic Somerville. You can all look forward to seeing some of the high school students and the local high school club and their teacher, Ada Santos, and Barbara all dressed up and making the rounds all the way from City Hall down to the other end of the city. And then on the 26th, which is a Tuesday, we actually have an opportunity to have everybody go to Orange Leaf Yogurt and benefit the museum's lecture series, or the Historic Somervilles. A portion of the proceeds goes toward that. They've been very supportive of the work we've been doing. And of course, it's very healthy and good. Hopefully by then it'll be warm enough that people want yogurt. And then we also have on the 20th of May is a talk at the Somerville Library, and that'll be for people that want to know how to research either their house or their family or both in Somerville. Christy Chase, who works with me for the commission and the city, will be there along with the chief reference librarian at Somerville Library, Kevin O'Kelly, and they will be talking about what the resources are that are available and how to use them to do that kind of research. And that is actually from 7 to 8:30 p.m. And then last but not least is the event that I peripherally mentioned, which is Thursday the 28th, which is the award ceremony at the Somerville Armory, and that will be celebrating the people that we're giving awards to for the work they've done on their properties. Some of which are designated historic. We have over 300 properties, close to 400 in the city that have been designated historic over a period of time. And then there's others that have just older properties that they have fixed up in a way that's sensitive to their original character. La Brosse, I mentioned, was a restaurant that's actually going to, restaurant in the whole building actually will be getting an award. And that starts at 6:30. It's open to everybody as well. We have a PowerPoint presentation and an opportunity to showcase Somerville High School. Once again, the high school which we work with as much as possible, because if you start young with kids, the hope is they'll have a greater appreciation of that, their own city, as well as just, what it means to be historic. And so anyway, we have the students in the CAD program, computer-aided design program, actually make renderings of the properties that win an award, the Directors Awards, and they do a fabulous job, and we work with them the whole second semester to measure the houses, so they're actually very much accurate drawings and actually to pick up on all the details on the houses so that they have an appreciation in a way that they never did before when you have to draw all those little brackets and and then also art students do the awards for the designated properties and they do freestyle so they can do pen and ink drawings, they can do watercolors, they've done sometimes ceramic pieces for a whole variety of different mediums that they use to represent that particular property. And the nice thing is that not only do those drawings or whatever they do get given back to them, but they'll be matted and framed by Stanhope Framers, who gives us a very good deal on that, with the support of Century Bank. They have been instrumental in supporting this program for many, many years, the matting and framing. And then, as well, the owners of those properties will get a copy of this rendering of their house. So it's a win-win for both groups. And that's an exhibit that we also do throughout the city during the year. Right now, you could actually go to the Somerville Armory and the cafe. There was an exhibit there that's just been taken down, actually, and it'll be at Century Bank on Fellsway West, their branch. It'll be there for the whole month of May to see. And it also is at City Hall. It's a mobile exhibit that goes around throughout the next year. And then I did forget one event, which I'm sure people in the audience will appreciate, which is the biking community. As I said before, we're totally supportive of the Somerville's bicyclists as well as people that choose not to use their cars. So we have collaborated with the bicycle committee in Somerville for 14 years now, and we do a historic bike ride, we call it. And that will be the very last day of May, which is the 31st. It's a Sunday, which is a good day for biking in the city because there's less traffic. And this year we have a different theme every year. And this year I chose one that is called Food, Flowers, and Farming, all flourishing anew in Somerville. Oh. And it's an opportunity for us to showcase a lot of the other greening initiatives that we've come up with in the city. We have a bulb program, a bulb blitz program that's, you know, hopefully something will still be blooming at that point. We have a lot of farming opportunities here in the city that the other person was mentioning Wednesday, who has a wonderful site that she's been doing some work on as well. And so we're doing it in collaboration with Groundwork Somerville this year, which is a local nonprofit that does some wonderful work with students again, often at the high school, to teach them a little bit more about environmental awareness and actually getting their hands in the dirt and productively making things grow. So we'll go to a couple of farming sites, and then we'll also be going to a couple of places that actually have food that's been grown locally or either is sold at different stores that from local farms and such around here as well. And we'll end up at the Aeronaut Brewery, which is a great place. And also they have something called Something Good there, which is a group that actually promotes local foods throughout the Somerville metropolitan area. And so we'll be sample some of the foods that they have available there as well. And that will be in the afternoon at 2 o'clock, goes generally till 4:30 or 5 o'clock. And we traverse the whole city. I mean, unlike the walking tours, we get to cover a lot more ground, literally. And so we try and take advantage of that, and we start at City Hall, and we go all the way from one end of the city to the other, and end up, as I said, back at Aeronaut.
Wow, so that's you have a schedule going, for I'll probably be there for some.
I'm not coming on here anymore with
Now I want to ask a couple questions for both of you, but the first one is, if someone, I guess they do research, but if someone thinks they're on a historic property, how does that play out for them? Like, how do they, I don't know, say, let me find out if this is that. I think my house was built in 18 whatever.
To research their house. Well, it sounds like they've got an upcoming lecture that they could go to,
but
for sure.
In general, is that something, are there more places that are being found out to be an historic house now? Like, what's...
Oh, certainly.
Is like it's still pretty frequently, like, you know...
Yeah.
Okay.
Plus the museum gets a lot of inquiries, you know, about that. But often one of the best places to go to is the Somerville Library. To the Somerville Room at the Central Library, and also, of course, to do deed research in Cambridge.
There you go.
Do you have other thoughts?
Well, I mean, we mentioned before Ed Gordon. He's an architectural historian, and that's how we first got to know him. We hired him and someone else actually to do a lot of surveying in the city, which we've done for a number of years. We passed a historic district ordinance back in 1985, and since then we've been doing surveying of properties to determine which ones are eligible to be historic. I mentioned we have close to 400 of them, and Ed has actually done a lot of that research, so we have the benefit of that. If you go on our website, which hopefully there will be up there for the city of Somerville as well as for Historic Somerville, you can actually see a lot of the research that's been done. In addition to the walking tours that has little blurbs about it, we actually have the master plan for the cemetery and for Nathan Tufts Park. We did a master plan there as well and such. And we can also put you in touch with the state, which has a website that you can download all these surveys from. And then people actually are doing the work themselves or the research themselves. They let us know that, and if they'd like to be designated, then we try and work with them to see if that's possible and if they're eligible.
One of the things about Somerville is that it's a completely developed city, you know, as we all know. But it does mean, if you think of the definition of historic as being 50 years old or older, as just kind of a catch-all way of dealing with it, well, you know, 99% of the houses in Somerville are, and also commercial buildings, fit that. So just about everything is historic. The question is, you know, again, it's really a lot of fun to go back and research it. And going to the Central Library and looking at some of the Sanborn maps that they have there, the librarians will help you with that. But you can really track your property back through time to see, you know, usually it's been subdivided from something else, and it usually came from a farm, you know, way back when. And it's a really interesting process to go through.
The Registry of Deeds would be the other place that people would want to go back and research their deed. You can follow it back, you know, to find out when it was first built, as well as, you know, who's owned it since. And there are a number of people that have properties in the city that might have only had 2 or 3 owners, which is pretty exciting. And there's others that have been, you know, passed down time and time again. And so, you know, you can learn a lot about how they've changed over time, sort of the history of the people. You know, sometimes they were built for workers in the factories nearby, and sometimes they were built for some of the merchants that lived in or worked in downtown Boston, had big important companies, and then came back to Somerville, which was kind of like a suburb and, you know, a very leafy community. And
yes, that's right.
Before it was built up, it was considered quite an address to live in.
Actually,
and so you can learn a lot about the city as well as how much it's changed through, you know, that kind of research.
Also, some of the oldest streets, you know, are like Somerville Ave. To go along Somerville Avenue, you have to find, that was where it initially started developing, and then it kind of went up into the hills a little bit more, and then eventually being in the hills was very nice because you look back over.
We're gonna have to wrap up, but please, definitely, everyone should come out to the walk and check everything out and the different events and learn more. And thank you so much for being on our show.
Absolutely.
Can I make one more plea, and that is for the Somerville Museum, you can go there and see Somerville Open Studios.
Oh, yes, of course. Yes, and that's we should mention. That's why we're ending the tour from 10 to 12, is so that everybody can go off from noon till 6 p.m. for the Somerville Open Studios, both Saturday and Sunday.
Yes, we can.
Great.
Okay,
thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Absolutely.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Okay.
All right.